It was May 1947. An aging man, frail but still proud, stood on a California hilltop one last time. His hair was silver, his steps unsteady, but his eyes lingered on the great stone towers that touched the sky. That man was William Randolph Hearst, once the most powerful newspaper publisher in America. For 28 years, he had built this place, his personal kingdom, his obsession, his unfinished masterpiece. As the car doors closed and his convoy rolled down the mountain, Hearst looked back at the castle he had named La Cuesta Encantada, the enchanted hill. He would never return. To understand the man who built a fortress in the clouds, we must start with the boy who dreamed of one. William Randolph Hearst was born on April 29, 1863, in San Francisco, California. His father, George Hearst, was a miner, a gambler, a man who chased gold through dust and danger. By the time young William could walk, his father was one of the richest men in America. His mother, Phoebe Apperson Hearst, was very different. She dreamed of art, music, and education. So, when William was 10 years old, Phoebe took him on an extraordinary journey, an 18-month trip across Europe. They walked through medieval castles that seemed to scrape the clouds, palaces filled with chandeliers and marble staircases, and somewhere in those long echoing halls, young William Hearst fell in love with grandeur. When he returned home to California, the memory of those castles stayed with him like a secret promise. One day, I'll build something like this. Even as a boy, William was fascinated by things, art, stamps, coins, and books. He collected anything that felt valuable or beautiful. By the time William left for Harvard University, his room was crowded with artifacts, paintings, and souvenirs from Europe. He wasn't an exceptional student. He preferred energy and creativity to rules. At Harvard, he became known for his bold humor and his love of mischief. Once, legend says he sent chamber pots engraved with his professors' names as gifts. The stunt got him expelled. But it also revealed who William Randolph Hearst truly was, a man who loved spectacle, attention, and risk. When William returned home, his father had acquired a failing newspaper, the San Francisco Examiner. William saw power. He begged his father to let him take over. William transformed the small paper into a sensation. He filled its pages with scandals, crime, gossip, and human drama. He understood what people wanted: emotion. Headlines screamed from every street corner. The Examiner's sales exploded. By the time George Hearst died in 1891, his son had become a publishing prodigy. He inherited not just his father's fortune, but his hunger for more. Yet, what William really wanted wasn't money. It was influence, and eventually, immortality. In 1895, Hearst bought the New York Journal and set out to conquer the biggest media market in the world. His rival was another publishing giant, Joseph Pulitzer. The two men went to war, not with guns, but with ink and headlines. Their newspapers battled daily for readers. Each issue was louder, flashier, more shocking than the last. It was this rivalry that created what critics later called yellow journalism. During the Spanish-American War of 1898, Hearst's papers published stories so dramatic they helped stir public emotion toward conflict. "You furnish the pictures," he was rumored to have said, "and I'll furnish the war." Hearst didn't just report events, he shaped them. By 1900, he owned papers from coast to coast. Millions of Americans began their mornings with his headlines. York Hearst, then 53 years old, met a 19-year-old chorus girl named Marion Davies. She was radiant, charming, and full of life. When Hearst saw her perform in the Ziegfeld Follies, he was captivated. Soon, the married newspaper tycoon and the young actress became inseparable. Society whispered his wife Millicent refused to divorce him, but Marion didn't care. Their relationship would last 34 years, longer than many marriages. To the world, Marion Davies was the mistress, but to Hearst, she was home. When Hearst's mother, Phoebe, died in 1919, she left him a gift that would bring his childhood dream to life: 250,000 acres of California ranch land overlooking the Pacific Ocean. It was the land where the Hearst family had camped when William was a boy. Now, at 56, he wanted to build something there, not a simple house, but a monument. He wrote a letter to an architect he trusted, Julia Morgan, asking her to design a little something up on the hill. That little something would become one of the grandest private residences ever built in America. It would take 28 years, cost the modern equivalent of nearly $1 billion, and remain unfinished. It would become Hearst Castle. He needed someone who could turn fantasy into stone. That person was Julia Morgan, a woman who built the impossible. In the early 1900s, architecture was dominated by men, but Julia Morgan didn't care. Her mind was sharp, her drawings precise, and her willpower unshakable. She wanted to study at the most prestigious architecture school in the world, the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris. But when she applied, they refused her. Women are not accepted. So she waited for 2 years. She stayed in Paris, studying, sketching, and applying again and again. Finally, in 1898, Julia Morgan became the first woman ever admitted to its architecture program. She didn't just pass, she excelled. In 1906, a devastating earthquake destroyed much of San Francisco. But 2 of Julia Morgan's structures remained standing. Suddenly, she was no longer the woman architect. She was the architect whose buildings didn't fall. Among her supporters was Phoebe Apperson Hearst, William's mother. When Phoebe died in 1919, William remembered the camping trips on that hill, and he wrote a short, almost casual letter to Julia Morgan. "I would like to build a little something up on the hill at San Simeon. I'm getting a bit old for camping in tents." It sounded modest. But when Julia Morgan visited the site, she quickly realized this would be no little something. The site was wild and remote. No paved roads, no electricity, no water. Still, Julia Morgan accepted the challenge. In 1920, construction began. First came the practical work: roads, water pipes, and generators. While Morgan handled the engineering, Hearst handled the imagination. He wanted towers like the cathedrals of Spain, gardens like those of Italy. He changed his mind constantly. "Make the main house larger," he'd say. "Add more guest rooms. Let's build a pool and a zoo." Julia Morgan never argued. She simply redrew the plans. Again and again, over the next 3 decades, she would draft more than 10,000 blueprints for the project. The estate was officially called La Cuesta Encantada, but everyone simply called it Hearst Castle. Before the great main house was even started, Julia Morgan built 3 guest cottages at the top of the hill. Each was like a small palace, beautifully tiled and filled with antique furniture. They were called Casa del Mar, House of the Sea, Casa del Monte, House of the Mountain, and Casa del Sol, House of the Sun. By 1922, the cottages were ready, and Hearst and Marion Davies moved in. Even with construction still raging around them, they began entertaining guests. Actors, writers, politicians. Every weekend, the hilltop buzzed with laughter, music, and the scent of ocean wind. Down below, hundreds of workers labored day and night. Hearst demanded perfection, and Morgan delivered, piece by piece. The dream began to take shape. The central mansion, Casa Grande, was unlike anything America had ever seen. Its twin bell towers soared 165 feet into the air. Inside, there would be more than 100 rooms. When Hearst arrived to inspect progress, he often brought new treasures. Whole ceilings, stone fireplaces, shipped from Italy or France. He'd say, "Julia, can you fit this one in?" And she always did. No castle would be complete without a pool, or in Hearst's case, 2. The first was the Neptune Pool. Built outdoors on a terrace overlooking the Pacific, it gleamed like a mirror, surrounded by marble columns and Roman statues. Inside Casa Grande, Julia Morgan built something even more breathtaking: the Roman pool. The walls and ceiling were covered in more than 1,000,000 tiny glass tiles, shimmering in deep blue and gold. It was less a swimming pool than a cathedral of water. By the late 1920s, San Simeon had become a magnet for the rich and famous. Politicians came, actors came, writers came. Marion Davies ruled the social scene like a queen, hosting parties, dinners, and film screenings in the castle's private theater. Guests marveled at everything: the 115 rooms of Casa Grande, the endless art, the private zoo filled with zebras, lions, and kangaroos roaming the hills. But behind the laughter and luxury, the project never truly stopped. Even after 20 years, Hearst kept expanding. New terraces, new fountains, new halls. He was driven not by need, but by obsession. Each day, he chased the same dream that began when he was 10 years old, to build something eternal. While visitors praised Hearst's genius, they often overlooked Julia Morgan's brilliance. She worked tirelessly, balancing his impossible demands with her own perfectionism. Sometimes Hearst would call her at midnight, wanting to discuss a new idea. She'd listen patiently, then revise the blueprints before morning. For 28 years, she never complained. She once said quietly, "My job is to make his dream possible." And she did. Hearst Castle would become not just her greatest project, but one of the most spectacular architectural achievements in American history. By the mid-1920s, Hearst Castle was a living legend. Visitors would travel from Los Angeles by train, then by chauffeured cars up a winding road. Along the road, they saw something no one expected: animals from every corner of the world, Zebras grazed beside the path. Giraffes stretched their necks to reach the oak trees. It wasn't a dream. It was Hearst's private zoo, the largest in the world. To his guests, it was breathtaking. To Hearst, it was normal. The man who collected castles also collected lions and zebras. The guest list of legends included Charlie Chaplin, Clark Gable, Winston Churchill, even presidents. Marion was the perfect hostess, but guests knew whose castle it was. Hearst ruled San Simeon with discipline. Breakfast was served late, dinner at 8. Guests were expected to attend both. Alcohol was limited. 1 cocktail before dinner, nothing more. The rule wasn't for morals. It was for Marion. Her drinking had become harder to control. Hearst, worried and protective, tried to limit her access. Every evening, guests would gather in the grand assembly room. The dining hall, the refectory, was 90 feet long with a 40-seat dining table. And what did they eat? Hamburgers. Hearst, despite his wealth, preferred simple American food. You dined like royalty, but you ate like you were at a roadside diner. After dinner, guests followed Marion into the castle's private theater. Hearst often screened movies weeks before they were released. Sometimes the film starred Marion Davies herself. Outside, the Neptune pool shimmered below, glowing from underwater lights. It was paradise. But on the surface, Marion Davies had everything except his name. She longed to be Mrs. Hearst, but his wife, Millicent, still refused a divorce. The loneliness weighed heavily. Alcohol became her escape. Friends noticed how her hands trembled. Sometimes she vanished during parties. Hearst never criticized her publicly. He protected her. He called her "My dear Marion." When she fell ill from drinking, he stayed by her side. They loved each other deeply. But it was a love trapped by the rules of their time. She could have his heart, but never his name. By the late 1920s, Hearst Castle was a world of its own. In total, 165 rooms spread across the estate. The Grand Assembly Room was the heart of the castle, with massive carved doors and rich Flemish tapestries. The billiard room was darker, moodier, filled with Gothic art. The library was one of Hearst's favorite places, overflowing with thousands of rare books. Upstairs, Hearst's personal space, the Gothic suite, looked more like a medieval fortress. Just down the hall, Marion Davies' suite was filled with light and grace. Though Hearst and Marion were deeply devoted, they maintained separate bedrooms. In public, he was married to Millicent, but on the hill at San Simeon, it was Marion who ruled beside him, the true lady of the castle. But dreams, no matter how golden, have shadows. Behind the grandeur, the costs were mounting. Maintaining Hearst Castle required millions of dollars each year. But Hearst didn't care. He kept collecting art, entire ceilings from Spanish cathedrals, fireplaces from French manors. He filled warehouses with antiques he never even unpacked. For him, collecting wasn't just a hobby. It was an addiction. Even as the Great Depression hit in 1929, Hearst continued to spend. His newspapers struggled. His investments faltered. But construction continued. He believed he could outspend the storm. He was wrong. By the mid-1930s, cracks began to show. His empire was collapsing under massive debt. His political influence was fading. His health was weakening. The endless parties at San Simeon grew smaller, quieter. In 1937, the dream ended with a single telegram. Stop all work entirely, San Simeon, now. After 28 years of building, Hearst could no longer afford to continue. The workers were sent home. Julia Morgan's blueprints were rolled up. The sound of hammers and saws vanished from the hill. The castle stood silent, unfinished, like a dream interrupted. The Great Depression did not spare even the richest men. By 1935, his debts had reached over $100 million. In 1937, the banks finally stepped in. They took over the Hearst Corporation. It was a humiliating blow. The man who once dictated the nation's headlines now had to ask permission to spend his own money. Through it all, one person stood by him: Marion Davies. When the banks froze Hearst's accounts, Marion quietly offered him her savings. Without hesitation, she gave Hearst nearly $1 million to help pay his debts. "He gave me everything," she said. "Now it's my turn." She wasn't just a starlet or a mistress. She was his partner, his protector. Together, they weathered the storm. In 1941, a young filmmaker named Orson Welles released a movie called Citizen Kane. It told the story of a powerful newspaper tycoon, and everyone in America knew who it was really about. It was about William Randolph Hearst. When Hearst found out, he was furious. He used every bit of his influence to stop it. For Marion Davies, the film was devastating. People assumed she was the talentless mistress shown in the movie. She once said softly, "I can't hate Orson Welles. He just didn't know me." After Citizen Kane, Hearst began to withdraw. His health declined. He spent his final years with Marion in a Beverly Hills mansion. He refused to return to San Simeon. Instead, he asked for photos of the castle to be sent to him regularly. He would sit for hours, staring at them silently. Perhaps in his mind, he still walked those halls. In the summer of 1947, William Randolph Hearst finally surrendered to time. He was 88 years old. The news of his death spread across the country. The front pages that once shouted his triumphs now announced his end. At San Simeon, caretakers lowered the flags to half-mast. The castle, his enchanted hill, seemed to fall under a hush, as though even the stones were paying tribute to the man who had dreamed them into being. Marion Davies was devastated. When one reporter asked if she ever wished she'd lived her life differently, Marion gave the only answer she could. Her voice trembled, but her words were clear. "I'd do it all again. Every bit of it." After William Randolph Hearst's death, the castle remained in the family, silent and magnificent. But no one ever truly lived there again. It was a kingdom without its king or queen. Finally, in 1958, the Hearst family donated Hearst Castle to the state of California. What had once been a private dream became a public treasure. Today, the castle is preserved as a museum, Tourists from around the world climb the same winding road, marvel at the Roman columns, and gaze at the glittering Neptune pool. But beyond the beauty, there's something else you feel. A quiet, almost haunting sense of longing, as if its walls still miss the man who gave them purpose. Some say you can almost sense Hearst's presence on the hill, not as a ghost, but as an idea. His dream, his energy, his hunger to build something eternal still linger in the air. Today, Julia Morgan is finally recognized for her genius. Her vision made Hearst Castle possible. Her engineering made it survive. Her patience turned his imagination into reality. She once said simply, "He was a man who dreamed big. My job was to make his dream last." And it has. Nearly a century later, Hearst Castle still stands tall above the Pacific, a shimmering monument to power, art, and the human hunger for something eternal. In the end, William Randolph Hearst achieved what he wanted most: to be remembered. His newspapers may have faded, his fortune may have dwindled, but the castle remains solid, magnificent, timeless. It whispers his story through marble halls and tiled pools. Power fades, wealth disappears, but dreams can last forever. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because we'll continue to share lessons that will help you grow smarter, live better, and rise higher every single day.